Welcome to Road to Reason. I'm Rick Wingrove. To my left, on the right side of your screen, is Paul Sheehan, who is
Hi, Mom.
He was normally the executive producer of this show, but stepped in to fill an empty seat today. So thanks, Paul.
You're most welcome, Rick.
Okay, this is our last show of 2013,
It is.
I think this is our 50th show that's gone out.
That's correct.
On the air. So, end of the year. By the way, be sure we're streaming on Ustream if you're watching us live. You can also see all the episodes on YouTube, and please go like us on Facebook and watch us every Sunday. Football season's almost over, so excuses are going to be over after that.
Yep, no more excuses, people.
That's right. So last show of the year, we're expecting to get a Skype. We're expecting to have Dave Moscato, the communications director for American Atheists, on Skype to talk about the Times Square signage that's gone up. And if he's not on yet, but if he doesn't, we'll discuss it without him.
We'll wing it ourselves.
We will indeed.
We won't be praying for a miracle. We'll handle it.
Right. And we're also going to talk a little bit about atheism on TV and in movies. And then also at the end of the show, I'm going to do a kind of a State of the Union, where we are, a status check on atheism, atheists in America. So,
and if you like to hear Rick talk, make sure you stay tuned for that.
Right. So, what do you got for us, Paul?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We are coming up on the end of the year, and we are also spending some time talking about, for our show, about atheism in movies. And movies and television is fantasy. So one of the things I definitely want to talk about is the fantasy that a lot of atheists seem to be suffering from in our community. And it is kind of a phenomenon that a lot of us atheists have noticed, that some of you out there are buying into the whole 9/11 conspiracy theory stuff. Ooh, why did Building 7 collapse? A lot of you are buying into crop circles and homeopathic remedies and miracle cures made from fruit smoothies. And we want to see you guys apply the same level of logic and reason that you do for religion into all this other stuff. And we're calling you out. We want you to start calling Road to Reason a skeptic's guide to the 21st century and start defending this pseudoscience that you all seem to be just willy-nilly able to accept when you don't apply that same type of logic or lack of thereof to religion. And yes, I'll be visiting your Facebook pages, and I will most definitely be challenging you on Facebook to call into the show and start defending it.
Yeah, you know, right now, I've noticed in the last week a lot of stuff about ESP and psychokinesis.
Yep.
And this you know, paranormal psychology stuff. It's embarrassing to me as an atheist to have to, well, I mean, that is embarrassing to the atheist community.
Sure.
The 9/11 conspiracy stuff, it's just embarrassing. It's ridiculous that atheists who are skeptical about what some people call the most important question in the world will just let this, you know, 9/11 stuff go. They'll just parrot it. Mm-hmm. Non-skeptically. There's that and the ESP stuff.
Well, I want these people to think about the damage that they do to atheism, the credibility to atheism, when they set down a rule of laws and theories and philosophies, and they try to get other people to buy into that to eradicate religion, but then the religious community can turn it on them and turn it on us and go, yeah, but you guys don't require that same level of skepticism for Bigfoot.
Right. You know, and we have voices on the atheist side like James Randi, like Penn and Teller, and these people are not just skeptics, they're professional skeptics who will blow this stuff out of the water.
Absolutely.
You know, they apply skepticism to everything, as we all should. What's interesting is a few months ago we had on JJ, whose last name, sorry JJ, I can't remember your last name, but she is I'm not sure the exact title, but she does preliminary testing on claimants for the James Randi's Prize. She's the first level of testing. And we had set up with some people right here in the studio, some people who claim to be able to do a telepathic thing of some sort. They were going to come in here, arrangements were made, and then they bailed at the last minute. So we never got to see that.
I think it's J.J. Banks, if I'm not mistaken. And if I'm wrong, I do apologize too. But the thing is that she had a guy claiming he could pick a playlist that was apparently set up by a friend.
A brother
at a remote location, a music playlist. And naturally, they backed out of it at the last minute.
Car trouble
or something like that. And of course, I guess they're still having car trouble all these months later.
Tire's still flat. So.
Why is that person any different than somebody who believes in homeopathic remedies? They're not.
Well, right. And there's plenty of information available, but just the failure to exercise skepticism in these select areas. Somebody just recently painted on our street near where I live, YouTube Tower 7. That's the thing. That's the smoking gun for them.
Yeah, smoking gun.
What it was a badly damaged building on fire that collapsed.
But Rick, what about the molten lava that was seen pouring out of the building? What about that?
Yeah, molten metal in a gigantic fuel fire. Yeah.
The thing that they don't get is that asking a question does not mean you're providing an answer.
Right.
And that's the thing that we talk about with the Bible all the time. It's, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about that? And you say, yeah, what about it? It's not proof. Questions are not proof.
You know who else answered questions with questions? Jesus. I'm just saying.
Dum, dum, dum. Well, and speaking of which, one of the other things that we're going to do is we're going to be visiting some local churches in the Northern Virginia, D.C., and Maryland area, and we're going to be inviting them to do exactly what we're inviting you atheists out there who are buying into all the pseudoscience to do, which is to come in, have a debate with us, set us straight. If you just swear it's true, step up to the plate, ante up. And we got some local churches in the area that I feel are very influential in our politics. And if they live in our community, then they should be answering on a community television station as to why we should be buying what they're selling.
I want to get somebody in here to defend transubstantiationism. Is that an ism? Transubstantiation. I had lunch with a Catholic priest about a year ago, and out in Leesburg, and he was a firm believer in transubstantiation, that the cracker and the wine literally, not figuratively, but literally turn into the body and blood of Christ. So there should be DNA traces. There should be ways to verify that, because when you come down to these claims, especially if you want to inflict your beliefs on others by force of law, like in creationism or something like that in the schools. When you're making these claims, I believe it is of some consequence whether or not they are true. And it's a good thing that we have on this planet a methodology available to us to determine what is real and true about the universe.
And I think when we're dealing with subjects like cannibalism, it's very important to be sure that it's true or not.
Yeah.
So.
If it is your ox getting gored, as they say, you'd like it to be true. If you're going to be hung for a horse thief, steal the horse. I'm not sure that's entirely appropriate.
I don't know either. But one thing I do know that is true is that we need your support here at Fairfax Public Access on Road to Reason, A Skeptic's Guide to the 21st Century. And in a moment, Carrie's going to put up a lower third with a check and with an address that you can send support information to. We are planning on expanding the show's topics. We are planning on bringing in bigger and better guests. And part of making that happen is you, the viewer. And if you are a skeptic, or even if you're a theist and you like what we do here, here's your opportunity right here on that screen to contribute and help make it happen. I can send this guy sitting next to me, and Rob and Liz and David Tamayo and Larry out to remote locations to do real interviews in the field. And that only happens if we have the funding to do it. And so we're asking you to step up. And you know what? We're at 10 minutes after the hour, and that would mean that Dave would or should have been on the line by now. But since he's not, let's talk about what Dave is dealing with.
Well, yeah, Dave appears to have forgotten our phone calls. But we were going to talk about, last time he was on about a month ago, I asked him at the time, what is American Atheist doing with signage this year? Are we doing something in Times Square and with billboards? Well, turns out we are.
And just as a note, and I know Carrie's got a lot in the control room to do, but I think we may still have a graphic loaded in there from last week, a still image of that billboard if she's able to find
billboard.
it. If not, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But tell me a little more about what's going on with that.
Well, for the third year in a row, I believe, we've put up a sign. It's at least the second year, but maybe the third year in a row, put up a sign, an electronic sign in Times Square. And this one said, and I forget, it's who needs Christ in Christmas?
Exactly.
Something like that. And there it is. We have the graphic up.
Carrie Rafter's on the ball. Gotta love her. All right.
Carrie's working the board today. So. Anyway, that sign, surprisingly, got some pushback.
Surprisingly.
Some people don't like it. They didn't like the one last year. They don't like the billboards, which kind of said the same thing. I wish we had a graphic of those. But they're basically pointing out that this is a season for everybody. It's not necessary to be a Christian. I've gotten where I even say Merry Christmas. What do I care? That is the holiday that some people are celebrating.
Absolutely.
Fine. I don't do that one, but some people do, and I just don't feel like having that fight every time I'm in a conversation with somebody.
Well, I think as atheists, we acknowledge that we live in a community of diversity. So there's nothing wrong with saying Merry Christmas to someone or Happy Hanukkah if that's what they celebrate. We're not about being, when we say we're secularists, but we're not isolationists. We're not.
Right.
We don't want to create. Well, it would be nice if we lived in an atheist world, but we don't want to do it at the expense of harming other people. So it's one of those things where when we want to talk about harm during the holiday seasons, we can then look at theists who do things like burn or try to burn banners, as they did.
Right.
In New Jersey.
There was vandalism
Yes,
of
there was.
some atheist displays around the country this year.
Yep, in Pittenham, New Jersey, there was a banner up that said "Keep Saturn in
Saturnalia."
Saturnalia, and apparently an off-duty police officer caught some individuals trying to pour gasoline and torch this banner. And out in Illinois, they had
Illinois, yeah.
they had 2 attacks on one banner. They had somebody that shredded a banner, and then they came back and stole it. And being atheist and having the sense of humor we have, and which we have to survive in a theist world, they put up a replacement banner, which was brilliant, and it said at the bottom of the banner, "Your God says, thou shalt not steal." So take that, you theist, don't steal.
Right.
It's not nice.
Right. Now, there was an episode here in D.C., and I'm not sure exactly when, but I believe it was in the last week or so, where 2 organs at the National Cathedral were vandalized. And it's important to understand, this was a woman, I don't know her exact story, but I believe she was mentally disturbed, had some beef with that church. I don't think she is even an atheist. And it is certainly not something we condone. As a matter of fact, if you ask me, I will say never, ever, ever vandalize. It does nobody any good, and it would give us a bad name. So I know a couple of nativity scenes in the past few years have had like baby Jesus kidnapped temporarily.
It's funny, but it's also
a little
not.
funny, but it's also illegal.
Yeah, it's illegal.
We certainly don't recommend it. We discourage that.
And quite frankly, it's not going to change anybody's mind. In fact, what it's going to do is resolve that they're right and you're wrong. If you're going to do something like that, you're not opening doors, you're closing doors.
No, it's just like the guy who breaks your Darwin fish off the trunk of your car.
Yeah, exactly. You think you want to have a conversation with someone like that? You think that that's somebody you're going to have a rational discussion with? No.
Yeah, no.
And I have to tell you that that's a rarity, though, that I hear. And of course, let's be very clear. When someone steals a baby Jesus out of a manger in front of a church, 9 times out of 10, I don't know, and I'm not saying it, no, that's probably not an atheist. That's some high school kid probably pulling some prank trying to impress their friends, which is how stupid that they can be. Because you don't get anywhere by alienating people, and that's just a bad way to approach it.
Childish, destructive
totally
stuff.
childish.
It changes the conversation when you do that in an unwelcome direction.
And I think, too, there is, and I have to say, I don't think religious people in this country have had to deal with persecution, real persecution, in many years. But atheists have. And when you attack our banners, and when you burn banners belonging to us, and you rip our banners, there is something I think that atheists feel that is one step away from being lynched, beaten, having their personal property destroyed, that you really need to take into consideration and realize it's going to backfire on you. We don't see it as a joke either. You wouldn't want somebody doing that to your church. Don't do it to our banners.
And I was going to say it may be more of a problem in other areas than it is here. But that's not entirely true, because winter before last on the Loudoun County Courthouse lawn, where we put up displays every year, or we're putting up displays every year, one of the displays was notoriously vandalized. As a matter of fact, it was the Santa Claus on a cross, skeleton Santa on a cross. That thing was dismantled in broad daylight in front of a cop, in front of a police officer standing right there, who basically threw up his hands and said, "I do not want to be involved in this," and walked away while a local woman, destroyed this. Now, the interesting thing about that is, just the sideline was, that wasn't even put up by an atheist. That was actually put up by a Christian young man who was making a statement about the commercialization of Christmas.
Well, it's the funny thing about people who are on a religious crusade. They do the most ignorant, stupid things in the name of their belief, and they're almost always horribly misguided, and usually have exactly the opposite consequence of what they're trying to achieve. And it's unfortunate that we're still dealing with that in this day and age. But one of the things, Rick, I know we're going to talk about today is how atheism has changed in perception over the years in television and film. And I think this is a really exciting topic. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to watch today?
Okay, atheism is increasingly visible in movies and in television. And really, looking for clips for the show today, I went back. The earliest one I found, easily was Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis in Moonlighting 25 years ago, where he is the believer and she is the atheist, and he won't even let her say the word. Yeah. And it was an interesting piece. You've seen the piece. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I saw the piece, and we're not actually going to show that on this episode, but I did make an observation I want to share with the viewers that I thought was really interesting. When you see the other clips that Rick selected for this episode, keep in mind that the Moonlighting episode was done in a dark room at night. There's nobody else around, and it seemed to be very metaphoric for the time that, to discuss atheism was more or less something you did in a closet, in a dark room with nobody else around. There was a lot of this what if you're wrong stuff. We don't hear that so much. It's not so much the crux of the argument anymore. So we can definitely see that there's an arc in the arguments. But the stage that they set for that on Moonlighting back 25 years ago was something that gays were dealing with, and other repressed people. And I think when you see the clips that we've selected for this episode, you're going to see just how out of the closet atheists have come in television and in movies. And I think Rick did a fantastic job doing that. So tell us a little more about what our first clip is going to look like.
First clip is from West Wing. It is a classic. A lot of you have seen it without much introduction. This technically isn't an atheist, but this is biblical criticism, serious biblical criticism.
You couldn't get away with 25 years ago.
Exactly. So this clip is actually about almost 20 years old. But
no, 20, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, if you have that West Wing clip, Carrie.
Forgive me, Dr. Jacobs. Are you an MD?
A PhD.
A PhD?
Yes, sir.
In psychology?
No, sir.
Theology?
No.
Social work?
I have a PhD in English literature.
I'm asking because on your show people call in for advice and you go by the name Dr. Jacobs on your show, and I didn't know if maybe your listeners were confused by that and assumed you had advanced training in psychology, theology, or healthcare.
I don't believe they are confused, no, sir.
Good. I like your show. I like how you call homosexuality an abomination.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
Chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. She's a Georgetown sophomore, speaks fluent Italian, always cleared the table when it was her turn. What would a good price for her be? While thinking about that, can I ask another? My chief of staff, Leo McGarry, insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly says he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? Here's one that's really important, because we've got a lot of sports fans in this town. Touching the skin of a dead pig makes one unclean, Leviticus 11:7. If they promise to wear gloves, can the Washington Redskins still play football? Can Notre Dame? Can West Point? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John for planting different crops side by side? Can I burn my mother in a small family gathering for wearing garments made from two different threads? Think about those questions, would you?
If I may say, I can actually answer one of those questions. I believe for a male child, the correct price is 20 shekels. For a girl, it's 10.
Glad we don't use shekels anymore.
Yeah. So, plus that may have drifted upward over the millennia, over the 3 millennia since that was written.
Yeah, inflation.
Yeah. So.
Well, I thought it was really interesting. I referred in our pre-discussion is to that piece being a bit of mental masturbation. It's like a world we'd like to see where somebody's called out. It's not currently the state of political affairs that currently exist in the United States. But he made a really important point about working on the Sabbath. And, for a lot of religious people, they very quickly want to, disregard parts of the Bible. And they want to say, oh, well, it's black and white. We don't do this anymore. We don't do that. I'm like, really? Tell that to your Christian brethren who can't seem to figure that out because, there are Mormons who can't work on the Sabbath. There's other religious sects out there. It's not black and white.
And which day actually is the Sabbath is a little controversial.
That is also controversial, and it's a real perplexing thing that for some people it's just not an issue, and for other people the Bible clearly seems to lay down the law for them. It's so unambiguous, such a gray area that you really have to ask yourself, what do you believe in, and how do you really come to justify it?
Right, and in that section of the Bible, of course, there's a couple of hundred things that'll get you killed. So little behavioral and dietary things.
All of them to be put to death by your fellow man, not by God.
Right.
He's got to have somebody else do it for him.
Now that scene was written by Aaron Sorkin, who is one of my favorite writers. He writes dialogue that flows 100 miles an hour. You got to be listening hard to keep it. It's like Shakespeare. You got to listen hard to listen to Aaron Sorkin. And he also has done some other shows which touched on that. Sports Night, they dabbled in religion a little bit. West Wing and Newsroom, which is currently between seasons on HBO.
Fantastic
which is
show.
Brilliant. And they are unafraid to touch on religion in there. And I think you can tell where Aaron Sorkin comes from. And he's not the only one. I mean, there's lots and lots of people touching on this now, and what you see is frequently the atheist character in these is not the bad guy. More and more frequently, it is some religious extremist who is the villain, I guess you could say, in the scene. So we are seeing a change in perception. Which, I touch on this at the end of the show in my State of the Union or status update, whatever you want to call it.
Very good.
But yeah, it's a definite change in perception. And there are other characters on other shows. There's almost too many. I'd like to start doing a weekly segment, this week in atheism or clip of the week.
I like that idea, and I want our viewers to make sure they comment and let us know what they think about that too.
Yeah, by the way, call in.
Call in.
On this or any other subject.
Set us heathens straight.
Yeah. If call in on this subject, or even if if you're a God believer and you want to fix us, call in. Let's talk about that. I think we can maybe fix you.
I think at the underlying core of what we do here is about free speech. It's about getting through life with our fellow human beings who believe, don't believe in various things through dialogue. And if you're not participating, it's kind of hard to do. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick, I know we got to move on to some other stuff, is we were talking in the pre-interview, I'm a total science fiction junkie. And one of my favorite shows of all time was Lost in Space.
Right.
And if you want to just get a really good taste for how far things have come in television and Hollywood, the pilot episode of that show, black and white, shown, I guess it was in the super early 60s, right about the time the Christian right was going full swing with trying to get in God We Trust stamped on our money, which I think started in the late 40s, early 50s?
No, mid-50s during
Mid-50s,
the
yeah.
Red Scare,
The
during
Red
the McCarthy
Scare.
era.
So this was also, we were seeing television bombarded with a lot of religious ideology.
Absolutely.
In that pilot episode, when they were on this planet, they all took to their knees and were praying for deliverance. And it was either only shown once or it was never actually shown. But from the rest of the series on, they totally stayed away from that. But you could see, even in the early 60s, where religion was really trying to insert itself in people will say, well, why is that wrong? Well, it's wrong because they're inserting themselves. They're not allowing an even playing field. It'd be one thing if you had one character was atheist and the other was religious, and they had a discussion, but where you have the main characters believing in God and propagating it as good and right. Mm-hmm. You're trying to take control of the field, and we're going to fight back.
But you said that later on that...
Yeah, they totally stayed away from it. It was that first episode, and I think what happened is there was blowback from it. I think,
a little too evangelical.
A little too evangelical, and I don't think that, if you know people like Billy Mummy and it was a Guy Williams and some of the other actors that were on that show.
You're going way back.
I just don't think that they were like, dude, we want the paycheck, but, there's only so much we're going to do for it. So.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I just got a sneaking suspicion. You see how far they departed from that mentality in the second episode, and they never went back to it. It tells you a lot.
Should we show the clip from House now
Yes.
before we go to break?
I think House is a great example of a character who deals with science and reason.
And just an unapologetic atheist.
He's unapologetic.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So, Carrie?
Welcome to the house of the Lord.
There's nothing in this universe that can't be explained eventually.
Faith. That's another word for ignorance, isn't it?
Faith isn't based on logic and experience.
You talk to God, you're religious. God talks to you, you're psychotic. Isn't it interesting that religious behavior is so close to being crazy we can't tell them apart?
Sister Augustine believes in things that aren't real.
I thought that was a job requirement for you people.
Because you can tell me that you put your faith in God to get you through the day, but when it comes time to cross the road, I know you look both ways.
You're an atheist.
Only on Christmas and Easter. The rest of the time, it doesn't really matter.
And that's why religious belief annoys you. Because if the universe operates by abstract rules, you can learn them and you can protect yourself. If a supreme being exists, he can squash you anytime he wants.
He knows where I am.
Faith is not a disease.
No, of course not.
On the other hand, it is communicable and it kills a lot of people.
How come God gets credit whenever something good happens? Where was he when our hearts stopped?
I'm not saying I agree, I'm just saying
That there's a rational basis for the irrational.
they have something we don't have.
Imaginary friends. Things aren't where we want them to be just because we want them to be there. Religion is a symptom of irrational belief and groundless hope. Mazel tov. Couple hours surgery, you'll be ready to push out those 14 children. Either God doesn't exist or he's unimaginably cruel. He hurts you to help you. I get it. People are just looking for a way to fill the holes. But they want the holes. They want to live in the holes. And they go nuts when someone else pours dirt in their holes. Climb out of your holes, people!
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week, the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
I bring the lost sheep back to the 99.
Don't know what that was.
That's a audio of our upcoming clip. So if you thought that was cool, just stand by.
Yeah, the best one's yet to come. But House, I didn't really watch that show. That wasn't in my rotation. I don't know why. I didn't find out until way late in the series that he was an atheist character. Nobody tells me anything. Tell me stuff. Anyway.
My wife was just signaling to me from the other room. I guess I'm licking my tooth.
Yeah.
And I just pulled out. So if people see that and it looks disturbing to you, I had a tooth extracted the other day, and I have what's called a phantom tooth.
Oh.
And I'll just point out that just because I feel that it's there doesn't mean that it is. So if you're wondering why I'm doing that, that's why. Yeah, so I don't want anybody going, what's that weird guy doing on screen?
Well, I hadn't noticed, but
right.
Anyway, House. Unapologetic. Love that guy. He just, he looks like he could be a little bit of a jerk sometimes, but
Yeah, he's a jerk.
We've all had our moments.
But even jerks can be right.
Yeah, it's just how you say it, I guess. But he takes an aggressive position. He really doesn't like it when God or Jesus get credit for his hard work. I saw a great meme on Facebook yesterday, I guess, where it was a baby in an incubator, intubated and with IVs and everything. And this was on apparently from a Christian website. And they're saying, Jesus heals, share if you agree. And all these people are going, yes, yes, yes. And one guy said, okay, now let's pull out the tubes and see how God does. So,
it's very true. We know what happens when people pray for cures. The kids die and they go to prison.
They die every year. We see it. And still it's allowed to go on. Religious exception, the laws should never happen.
Yeah.
We're against that.
I mean, it's one of those deals where your kid has no choice in the matter. And the kid's going to innately go along with what the parents are telling them is right. So even if, I was just reading an article where these parents were arrested because they were refusing treatment for their kid, and the whole thing was about how the poor child was being victimized. And I am sure it is very traumatizing for the child. The parent in that situation is for lack of a better word, the God to the child. I mean, they're everything. They make the world go around. And the parent is making horrible decisions for the children. The state is therefore intervening, and this child's world comes crashing down around them. And I know on House, there was bits of the clip that I cut out where he was talking even to some very young people in these hospital beds and setting them straight. And you know what? You can tell the child the truth. The truth isn't going to kill them. And the truth of anything, once they come to terms with it, will make them stronger. They know where they stand. And that's one of the great things about that show, is that they don't let you off the hook. The people still die on that show. People still recover without faith. And that show does a fantastic job of dealing with the real science behind what makes people well. That it doesn't let people feel good. It lets them deal with the reality. And that is one of the powerful things about television and film as a medium, is that you do have the ability to challenge conventional thinking through a form of art. And all throughout human history, that's how things have often changed when it's too taboo to do it otherwise. You can't really go stand up on Capitol Hill and tell the truth about a situation, but you can push it through in art forms. And I'm very grateful to see TV shows like House and West Wing out there doing that, because they are making a difference.
And it's showing up in lots of movies. I was watching a little independent movie a couple of nights ago called Stuck in Love, and it was kind of centered around a young writer who was an atheist, and she was also very liberal in her sexual activity. And she was at a party talking to a young creationist. And she says, well, I believe in evolution. He goes, well, I'm just out of here. And she goes, that's the thing about you creationists. You keep talking yourselves out of getting laid. So it just shows up more and more. It used to be something you would never hear talked about at all. But, it is showing up more and more. Let's show the orange clip.
Yeah, we got the orange clip, and then we got to come back, and you have your speech coming up soon. So let's do orange.
Behold, I bring the lost sheep back to the 99. All right. As you know, we don't have a river to dunk you in, but we cleaned out the muck sink, and yeah, you might just want to take off your shirt.
Okay, no, see, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I really want us to get along. I do, but I can't pretend to believe in something I don't. And I don't.
Chapman, we've all had our doubts.
No, see, this isn't doubts. I believe in science. I believe in evolution. I believe in Nate Silver and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Christopher Hitchens, although I do admit he could be kind of an asshole. I cannot get behind some supreme being who weighs in on the Tony Awards while 1 million people get whacked with machetes. I don't believe 1 billion Indians are going to hell. I don't think we get cancer to learn life lessons. And I don't believe that people die young because God needs another angel. I think it's just bull. And on some level, I think we all know that. I mean, don't you?
The angel thing does seem kind of desperate. Thought you was a Christian.
I am, but I got some questions.
Look, I understand that religion makes it easier to deal with all of the random things that happen to us. And I wish I could get on that ride. I'm sure I would be happier. But I can't. Feelings aren't enough. I need it to be real.
That was a scene from Orange is the New Black, which is available on Netflix, and we binged it. As soon as it came out, we watched that over a weekend, and that was one of the most brilliant sections. I believe that was actually in the last episode of the first season, and it's one of the best. I don't know, just almost a signature scene. Championing atheism, and as you saw there, the nice, caring, compassionate character who is in prison over. I won't even go into it. She probably shouldn't be there, though. And the bad person...
Most non-violent people, in my opinion,
should not be there.
Okay.
But the person trying to forcefully baptize her at a slop sink there is a stone killer who is the most evangelical Christian in the prison. And so it was an interesting interplay between those two.
I had a couple thoughts on that clip too that I thought were really interesting. Even setting the characters aside, there was a couple things that were really standing out to me. One is that the moment she interjected some reason into it, one of the other people kind of saw some light there. It doesn't take much.
I've got questions.
I got some questions, and wait a second, I thought religion is supposed to provide the answers. How is it possible that you have questions if in fact religion is the answer? The other thing I thought was interesting, and I'm not saying that religion per se is good, but she's in a community. They wanted to bring her in to be a part of this community. There was and that's a human factor, that predates even any type of recorded history. Why can't that be happening on a secular level? Why can't it just be a woman bonding thing? Hey, we're women, we're in prison, let's stand together, let's empower ourselves. Why do we have to stick our head in the sink?
Yeah. Well, again, the little girl trying to baptize her was just a stone killer, had very bad impulse control, and just a fit of anger frequently resulted in somebody being dead around her. So, and that's what I was talking about earlier, how the portrayal of the characters has flipped now as people come to know us, that we are here, that we're everywhere, that the predictions about us, what they've been told from the pulpit for all these years, just isn't true. I'm getting into my status speech a little bit,
which we get to come up on a couple minutes here. But it's one of those things where I think atheists, instead of having a God have to forgive them, they have to learn how to forgive themselves. They have to learn to take responsibility for their actions. There's not some deity that just absolves them of their responsibilities.
Right. It seems kind of like an avoidance of responsibility to make the devil or somebody else responsible if you're...
Well, it's okay, Rick. I mean, I found God.
Yeah, right.
It's all good now. Well, okay, that's fine, But if I want to trust you again, I need to know you have taken responsibility and that you are doing what you need to do in order to not murder somebody else or whatever the crime is. And as long as you're putting that responsibility on someone else or some deity, I don't hear from you, what I need to be hearing to trust you again. And that's what I love about that clip, is that she is in prison. Whether she did something wrong or not, she's like, hey, I'm not going down the road of letting some deity take responsibility for me. I trust in science and fact. And it was very reassuring to see that even in a place like that, where people are often very desperate and needing hope, that she didn't allow herself to be lulled or peer pressured into that. And that was great.
She was very strong. She was educated, and she was a nice person, and not giving anything away about the show, but she had transported not drugs, but drug money internationally something like 11 years prior. There's a 12-year statute of limitations. She got ratted out by somebody who got caught. So 11 years after she thought it was all over, she's living a normal life. She's married, good job, doing well. All of a sudden, the drug war caught up with her, and she's going to prison for 18 months, I believe. It's based on a true story, by the way.
Certainly a person that would be deserving of God's hand coming down and wiping that type of horror out of their path, And unfortunately we hear about these things all the time. And, I like the fact that we saw television tackle that as an issue. And
I want to see more of that, and I think we are going to see more of that. Yeah. It's probably about time to...
It is time for Rick's State of the Union speech.
State of the Union.
And what we're going to do is they're going to pull up a teleprompter for him, which they're getting ready to do now. Yeah,
because I don't have this memorized. I finished writing that like an hour ago. So anyway, it is the end of the year, and it's just a little status update on where we are as an atheist community. Go back down just a little bit.
Just keep it slow.
Okay, I just want to take this opportunity. The days are getting longer. It's solstice. So let me get caught up here. Time for a year in status on the state of atheism and atheists in America. You can go a little faster. And my assessment is this, to put it as succinctly as possible: we're winning. Now, what does it mean when I say we're winning? What's the prize? Where's the goal line? What does a win look like? On a scale from global theocracy to rational utopia, where are we? To understate our progress, let me just say that at least in the scientific democracies, we're no longer being hunted for bounty, and that's a good thing. That's a welcome development. Obviously, the fight for reason is not over, and there's still a long way to go, but you have to look where we've come from to see what we've accomplished. Sometimes our 3 steps forward are followed by 2 steps back, but that's still a step forward, and that is a net win. And that's what we're building on. Religion is still incredibly powerful, well-funded, and with an iron grip on the minds of most humans on this planet. They will not relinquish that control easily or voluntarily. There are still countries on this planet where you can be beheaded for being an atheist, or imprisoned or tortured for inadequate religious compliance, and where there is no distinction between religion and government, nor is such a division permitted. After thousands of years of power, prestige, wealth, and influence, and literally a license to kill, separation and equality is a huge demotion for religion, and one that religion does not consider a settled matter. In this country, we still see, despite our Constitution, a broad movement to ignore, deny, and circumvent the founding principle of separation between religion and government. Science, the way that all knowledge is validated on this planet, is still under vicious attack by those who perceive correctly, I believe, that science refutes passages critical to the biblical narrative. They should be concerned, because science directly contradicts Genesis in a number of ways that are fatal to the ridiculous notion of an inerrant Bible. But religion is stumbling. More than ever, biblical apologists are having to defend Levitican Sharia, from slavery to rape marriage, from killing gays to killing non-virgin brides, from God-directed genocide to eating shellfish, trimming beards, mixing crops, and about 200 other offenses that are so trivial that they're not the law anywhere anymore, but they will still get you killed if you hold to the Bible or the Quran. Criticism of Christianity is not new and predates the founding of this country by centuries. Many have bravely spoken out when it was still lethal to do so, and many paid that price, the ultimate price, for simply asking questions. Progress has been slow, but if there was a critical turning point in history, it was the penning and ratification of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Our Constitution is a purely secular document outlining the powers and structure of our government, nothing else. But notably, it contains 2 prohibitions against the intrusion of religion into government. It was the first constitution of any country that divorced religion from government, and that was no mistake. And the Supreme Court has stood behind constitutional separation of church and state. Christianity has no legal leg to stand on here, and this is an argument we really can't lose. However, progress was slow for a long time in dissuading adamant Christianists and separation deniers from their incessant assault on fairness and reason, and from acting on their sense of entitlement. Atheism was still a lonely, unpopular, and dangerous thing for most of American history. But slowly, the dam has begun to break. The influence of Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and non-founders like Charles Darwin and Robert Ingersoll chipped away. Science came into predominance and dealt blow after devastating blow to the mythology of the desert tribes. Landmark Supreme Court decisions like Murray versus Curlett and Lemon v. Kurtzman served to prevent runaway religious intrusion into schools and in the public square, and in legislation affecting rights and access to government by people who do not share that religious belief. But nothing has done more to drive a silver spike into the heart of religion than the internet and the ready availability of information about, well, everything. For atheists, the internet gave us a way to find each other and to begin to organize as political and social forces, and to reverse the damage being inflicted by the moneyed and powerful Christianists, dominionists, fundamentalists, moral absolutists, and of course the creationists in their unholy assault on science and their Orwellian anti-intellectual surge. That all sounds a little bleak, I suppose, but perspective is required to measure progress. So what are the signs of progress? Let's start with the demographics alone. The American Religious Identification Survey, ARIS, shows a huge, statistically significant move away from religion in this country. Only half of Americans even claim to attend a church. And if you drive anywhere on a Sunday these days, you'll know that a lot of them are just lying. Only 75% of Americans even claim to be Christian now. That means that 80 million Americans don't fit neatly in one nation under God. ARIS also revealed a new demographic designation, the nones, those with no religious affiliation. But these are people who have abandoned all the ancient and conventional religious designations, finding them at the very least irrelevant. While only about 2% of Americans are comfortable self-designating with the word atheist, it is clear that the ancient superstitions no longer scare millions into trembling compliance with ancient stories of eternal torture. Most telling of all is the fact that over the age of 35, the nones make up about 20% of the population. Under 35, it is over 33%. This is the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wiki-powered millennials. This is a massive demographic shift with enormous and negative implications for organized religion. But it gets worse for the churches because it is increasingly clear that many of those who still attend do so only out of momentum and family and social pressure. And as older Christian Americans die out, the churches are becoming increasingly unable to fill the pews, and they are dying on the vine. And worst of all, even the preachers are bailing. The Clergy Project, which we've talked about here on the show, is an organization that helps preachers and ministers, those most familiar with the Bible, who have come to grips with the non-existence of God, even as they stand in the pulpit, but find themselves entrapped in that pulpit. It's helping them find a way out. To date, well over 500 preachers have taken the Clergy Project as an underground railroad to freedom from the tyranny of God belief. And there is also our growing acceptance in pop culture and growing acceptance and visibility in movies and television, as we've talked about here today. And as I said earlier, the atheist character is more commonly portrayed as smart, funny, sympathetic, wise characters, with religious extremists increasingly portrayed as misinformed and mean, or at least clueless, and in many cases just downright sick and evil. Smart, informed champions of science and reason, as well as the environmentally concerned and socially responsible, are becoming our heroes with widespread social acceptance. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson bring us science. Brad and Angelina build post-Katrina houses in New Orleans. Intelligence, involvement, and compassion are the calling cards of atheism these days, not the face of evil, as we've been told from the pulpits for over 2 millennia. The internet has allowed us to be visible and vocal with little fear of retribution. Visible and vocal is making all the difference. The public exposure has slowly reassured the general public that we are not the monsters we've been portrayed to be. The more of us who come out of the closet tend to reinforce the fact that we are their friends, their neighbors, their IT guy, the cop, the doctor, the lawyer, the judge, the government official, and even members of their own family. We were always there, but the dire consequences that were preached from the pulpits were not, and those don't exist. Our motto should be, we're here, we're normal, get used to it. And in the past 20 years, we've become so mainstream that we have been mentioned by presidents and popes as equals in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness under the law. I'm not one to fawn over the Pope, but you have to admit that even this guy is saying some pretty enlightened and inclusive things, rather than merely commanding our death. And we all suspect that Obama is a secret atheist anyway, whose wife just makes him go to church. Anyway, the old ways are dying, and while religion is a long way from done, it is clear that the game has now changed, and the trend is irreversible, short of a new inquisition. As our numbers grow, so do the favorable perceptions about us. As people know us personally, they like us. We're everywhere, and we enjoy the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness equal to the most ardent believers. So let's face it, it's now cool to be an atheist, and it's driving the old religious guard nuts. We are winning, and our progress is obvious when contrasted against 2 millennia of brutal Bible-based repression. We're out, and there is no way we're going back in. Pandora's box is so wide open now, we can't even find the lid. And best of all, atheism is entirely consistent with science, with logic, with reason, with compassion, empathy, and humanism, important traits with which religion seems entirely at odds. So it is not only reasonable to be an atheist, it's safer than it's ever been, and it's a good thing. So come out and help us make the world a better place. We're winning. We're growing in acceptance, and nothing to apologize for.
Hearing that has inspired me to give up eating babies. I'm impressed.
I've thrown out all my recipes. We don't do that anymore.
We don't do that anymore.
It's been a long time.
That really was impressive, and I think it's really on mark, and that is what we're trying to accomplish here at Road to Reason. And again, we're talking about viewer participation. I know we're going to be going into a new year. Yep. And this episode has been about media, television, and film. This is the role we're playing. I'm very proud to have people like Rick and Rob and Larry and Liz and Dave Tamayo as our hosts.
If it's a sign of progress, too, that we're not the only atheist show on television. There's some very notable ones, including Atheist Experience, who we all strive to emulate.
Good stuff, Matt.
It is good stuff. Yeah,
and,
Matt.
And we even got another atheist radio program right here. Our last week's host has a radio show.
Nondescript Atheist on radio right here.
Yeah.
At this station.
And which is really interesting when you think about the fact that most of public access television is religious programming. So we're definitely doing our part to break through in the atheist community, and we want to make sure that everyone has a voice, and that's what we're stepping up to the plate and doing.
And we're happy to have you watch and to call in. I know that probably as we speak, there's some Catholic programming or something going on in one of the larger studios here.
There is.
They have more money available than we do.
And they watch. I know this.
We know they watch.
We know you watch.
They ratted you out for a dirty word last week, right?
I think so. and quite frankly, they're welcome to call. If you got something to say it to our face.
Yeah, let's chat this out. We have a difference of opinion. It is relevant. Who's right?
Hey, I will just tell people, some of the most wonderful people I know are religious. And quite frankly, doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're wrong.
Yeah.
And we're coming up on the end of our show in a few minutes. I heard the phone ringing.
I heard
there.
it too. I wonder.
Come on, can we get that call in? Yeah, we got a phone call.
Just throw them on here.
Throw it on. We only got a few minutes left.
Who do we have?
Yes, I have a quick question. I'd like to find out if you guys believe in an afterlife, and I'd like to hear your explanation on that. Thanks.
I'll let Rick go first, and then I'll get mine.
No, we do not. The brain is an organ, highly complex organ, which runs on electricity. And like all electrical devices, when you turn off the juice, the lights go out, period. Sorry.
I have a hard enough time making this life work to be worried about an afterlife. For me, as an atheist, the answer is I don't know. I haven't ever seen a bit of evidence to suggest that there actually physically, scientifically is an afterlife. I'm certainly open to the possibility of it, but nobody's ever impressed upon me the fact.
It would be nice. It'd be lovely. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more stuff I'd like to see. Future cars.
Yeah.
I'd love to see more of that.
I want to be cryogenically frozen and woke up like in 1,000 years just to check out things. Then you could just off me, because I think after that I'd pretty much say I could see and done it all.
But thanks for that call.
Thank you.
Short answer to your question is no.
Nope. No.
Yeah. So, but good.
Yeah.
I managed to get one in. We're coming up on the end of it here.
Yeah, I was going to mention Lori Hodgson's, who was on a few weeks ago, will be coming back on. Scientology escapee, whose children are still in. She was just on A Current Affair. If you haven't seen that episode, check it out. It is on YouTube. She went out, tried to reach her son. She actually did talk to her son. It is a tear-jerking moment. She's going to be back on talking about how that particular recognized religion is, in fact, destroying her life, and how she's fighting to take control of it.
Okay, you're taking us along. We got to go.
Yeah, we're good. All right, we're done.